For as rage-inducingly satisfying as Celeste's gameplay and level design are, it's the game's story that caught my attention. It follows a young woman named Madeline as she goes on a journey to reach the summit of the titular Mount Celeste, whilst trying to overcome her insecurities. It's a nice little story filled with fun characters that, admittedly, wears its themes on its sleeve, being a thinly veiled metaphor for someone dealing with mental illness. But it takes a surprisingly nuanced stance on the topic that subverts our typical expectations of how a story like this would go. And it's why, in this episode of the Storyteller's Notebook, a series in which I analyze various storytelling techniques from various creators and various mediums, I want to break down Celeste's themes and find out what it's trying to say. And yes, spoilers ahead. To start, let's quickly summarize the story of Celeste. As mentioned before, you play as Madeline, a young woman with some undefined mental health issues looking to climb Mount Celeste. As she climbs, she runs into various characters in several unique locations, but she soon starts to realize that there's more to this mountain than meets the eye, as it begins creating physical manifestations of her insecurities and worries. Specifically, the manifestation of all the negative aspects of Madeline's personality, referred to in-game as that part of her, but known online as Badeline. Whoever thought of that deserves a medal. Badeline tries to get Madeline to give up on her journey in a variety of ways, going so far as to knock her down the mountain. And Madeline almost gives in, thinking it would be better to just go home instead of dealing with her herself, until, after having an insightful conversation with the old woman of the mountain, she decides to try and work with Badeline instead of fighting her. She's reluctant at first, but Madeline is eventually able to change her mind, and together they climb back up the mountain and push through its many, oh so goddamn many challenges, and finally reach the mountain's summit. Even with that short description, it's kind of obvious what this game is going for. It's about mental illness, and more specifically, how to cope with it. The game starts with Madeline telling herself to calm down and wondering why she's so nervous about going on this climb. She has a history of panic attacks, as we learned from her phone call with this unnamed character and her mother, and even has a few of them throughout the game. But for as much trouble as she's having, she sees climbing the mountain as the only way to deal with these problems, and to prove to herself that she can overcome them. Though it's never specified what exactly Madeline is going through, it's heavily implied that she has some kind of anxiety disorder, or even depression. This is exacerbated by the introduction of the aforementioned Badeline, a physical manifestation of her anxiety who acts as the game's main antagonist. Madeline's character and her relationship with Badeline establish a thematic through line of finding a way to overcome one's mental health problems. And it's a conflict that Madeline is desperate to win, lest her anxiety consume her. This is where Mr. Oshiro comes in. Mr. Oshiro is the ghostly owner of the Celestial Resort, a once-renowned hotel that has fallen into disrepair. He is a lonely and insecure man riddled with self-doubt. He mutters to himself about how poor a job he's doing with the hotel and despairs over the fact that Madeline doesn't want to stay, and thinks it's his fault. His insecurities have gotten to the point that they manifest as strange black blobs all across the hotel, that Madeline has to carefully dodge around as she makes her way through it. Mr. Oshiro's character not only serves as a representation of how badly an anxiety disorder can affect a person, leaving them isolated and unable to function in the outside world, but also sets the stakes for Madeline's journey, showing what she fears would happen to her if she were to fail. This is where the game begins to ask what can be done to help with such issues. Madeline does her best to help Mr. Oshiro, trying to reassure him, complimenting the hotel, and even helping him clean up the place. But none of it seems to help. In fact, it only seems to make him more paranoid. It reaches a boiling point when Badeline intervenes, snapping at Mr. Oshiro and creating an escape path for Madeline to get out of the hotel. She then mocks the pair of them for being pathetic, and Mr. Oshiro reacts violently to the comment. He turns into a monstrous version of himself and hunts down Madeline, thinking she's the one who made fun of him. She's only able to escape when Mr. Oshiro caves in the roof of the hotel and asks her to leave so he can repair it. Madeline did her best to bring about some kind of change in Mr. Oshiro and failed. It shows that you can't force someone with these issues to recover, and doing so will just make things worse. As the old woman says later, you have to let people heal on their own schedule. The best thing you can do for them is to simply be there for them and to be patient, just as Theo is for Madeline when she's feeling down. Similarly, the game suggests that we can't force our own issues to simply disappear either. Throughout the game, as Madeline faces off against all sorts of perilous dangers and obstacles, including the Lovecraftian nightmare that is the Mirror Temple, we see that she doesn't just want to cope with her anxiety, she wants to get rid of it completely. Of course, when Madeline confronts Badeline with this idea and tells her that she doesn't need her anymore, things take a turn for the worst. Badeline throws Madeline down into the caves of the mountain, leaving her both literally and figuratively at her lowest point. The game subverts our expectations here, building up the idea that Madeline will be able to leave her problems behind, only for it to fall flat on its face. It's a simple touch that reflects real life, as many mental illnesses are long-term problems that those suffering with them may have to deal with for the rest of their lives, and that don't just go away. I can tell you that firsthand. It's a disheartening revelation, and one that the game isn't afraid to shy away from. However, it does offer some hope. After wandering through the oddly vibrant caves of Celeste Mountain, Madeline runs into the old woman again, who suggests that Madeline is simply scared, and that Madeline should try to talk to her. And after a finger-cripplingly difficult boss chase with Madeline asks her other self to work with her instead of fighting her. Madeline is reluctant at first, but eventually agrees to help, and together they're able to reach the mountain's summit. After failing to get rid of her insecurities, Madeline instead decides to embrace them. It may seem like a strange decision, but as is constantly pointed out in the game, Madeline is still a part of Madeline. She's not some ghostly demon haunting her psyche, at most she's a self-defense mechanism gone haywire. She's just trying to protect her in the most roundabout of ways. And of course, the advice itself comes from someone that the game implies has been through the same experience, showing that you can still live a full life even with these issues. The game suggests that, though you may not be able to rid yourself of your problems completely, you can still achieve great things by accepting and coming to terms with them. Celeste's story, though simple, is a surprisingly nuanced exploration of mental illness, specifically anxiety and depression, and how to cope with them. It carefully examines the struggles faced by those suffering with these problems, showing how badly it can affect them, and the many ways in which they try, and sometimes fail, to manage them. And in the end, it says that the best way to deal with these issues, whether it be you or someone close to you, is not to fight it or force things to change, because doing so will only end up making things worse. Instead, you should embrace it, and seek to understand it, because only then will you be able to find a way to cope. After all, if you waste too much energy trying to change how you're feeling, you won't have enough left to do anything else. And yeah, those are my thoughts. Tell me what you think. If you agree, disagree, what part you got stuck on in Celeste, if this game's message has been able to help you in some way, etc. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this and want to see more, check out my last video where I talk about the end of the fucking world and why its quirky characters, humor, and presentation make it so fun to watch. Or check out my video on Doki Doki Literature Club and One Shot, where I compare and contrast the different ways they break the fourth wall. And don't forget to like, comment, share, and of course, subscribe to come fly with me. You can also follow me on Twitter for updates about this channel and other stuff, and hopefully, I'll see yous later.